Press Shift A, get a plane, scale to 3, get a camera, bring it up a little bit, and reset the rotation. Change the resolution to 2000 by 2000, and change perspective to orthographic. See, now the camera perfectly fits the square. Press H to hide the camera so it doesn't get in the way. Now split the screen so we can get on with the shading. Hit New to make a new material. Make a texture coordinate node and plug it into UV. The reason why we're going to use UV will be discussed later on. Take a vector math node and set it to -0.5 on all the axes. What that's going to do is put the origin in the middle and make it easier to work with. Now duplicate the vector math node and make it an absolute, then pair that with the separate XYZ node. So why did I use absolute? Well, what does an absolute value do in math? It essentially chops off the negative value and turns it positive. So what does that mean for nodes? That means it's going to take that positive value that's being pumped into the coordinate system and mirror it onto the other side. Take a math node, clamp it, keep it at add, duplicate it, and change it to multiply. Make a value node and duplicate it, and then plug one value node into the add and then the other into the multiply. Bring up the value node that goes into the add, that's going to add more black to the plane, and then bring up the value node that's going into the multiply, that's going to tighten everything up. Duplicate the add and the multiply and bring it down, then plug Y into the first slot of the add node. Bring the value from the add on the top to the bottom, and then the same thing for the multiply. Combine them together with the math set on add, there you go, you got a square. Now you're telling me, I want to rotate this square. Well, I'll tell you how. Get a vector rotate node, put it in front of the absolute, and set it to 45. And now you're telling me I want many rotated squares. Well geez, I'll tell you. Get a vector math node, set it to scale, then duplicate it, then set it to fraction. Combine the UV to scale, then the scale to fraction, then the scale to add. And then move the scale, and there you go. The reason why this works is because the fraction node is dividing up the coordinate system depending on how much is being scaled. For example, if it's being scaled by 1, there's only going to be 1 coordinate system showing, but if it's being scaled by 2, there's going to be 4. So to go back to what I was saying earlier, the reason why we're going to use UV will be discussed later on. The reason why I'm using UV is because UV is the only coordinate system that is able to scale. That is because UV has boundaries. It has a finite space, unlike object coordinates that scales forever. We're done with the squares for now. We're going to move on to something else. Take out a Voronoi texture, plug the UV into the vector, turn the randomness to 0, and put the color into the output. Take out a value node and put it into the scale of the vector math node and the Voronoi node. This is so you can scale them equally. Get a separate XYZ node and put the position vector from the Voronoi texture into the vector slot of the separate XYZ node. Then get a math node and set it to add, and add the color output from the Voronoi node and the Y output from the separate XYZ node. And then add a math set on less than. The reason why I did this is because the way that the less than works is that it sets all the values in the coordinate system that are less than the threshold to white. And because of the sporadic differences in color in the Voronoi texture and the gradient in the separate XYZ node, there will be a bold, thick line of white going into a pixelated fall off into black that always faces up. You'll see why this is important later. Now get a mix RGB node and plug the output from the less than node into the factor. And now set your squares into color 2 and set color 1 to black. Now adjust the squares until you get something that has a good amount of fall off and a good amount of black. Now hit F12 to render it. Save it somewhere where you're going to remember it, and then go to GIMP. Make a new project. Set the resolution to 2000 by 2000. In the Volution Discord, there's this frame template. I'll put it in the description. Just download it and drag it into GIMP. Hit Shift S to go into scaling mode, scale to 2000 by 2000. Press M to go into moving mode, and then go down to the bottom left corner and align it up like that. Import the image you rendered out. I masked out some of the squares. I right-clicked, went to select, then invert and hit delete to delete everything except the selected part. Then aligned it on the template at the down tube. Export it to a place you can find it, and then do the same thing with your seat tube. Go to Blender. Import the frame model that's in the description, and then drag both the down tube image and the seat tube image onto the shader workspace on the frame. add the two images together with the math node. To get a gradient on the frame, get a texture coordinate node and a separate XYZ node, set it to Z, and then get a vector math node and adjust the Z axis around so you can get a usable gradient. Get a color ramp node and change the color on the different points to get a different gradient. I'm gonna choose purple and black. Now move the points to make a tighter gradient. Get a mix RGB, use the two images that are added together as the factor, and then put the color ramp into color 1 and then use color 2 to select the color of the squares. I chose an unsaturated pink. We're almost done. Duplicate the mix RGB and use the combined images as the factor. We're gonna make a bump map. So I found this seamless brushed aluminum texture online. I dragged that into my shader workspace and hit Ctrl T to bring up this texture coordinate node and mapping node. I brought up the scale, and then I plugged it into color 1. Take out a bump node and put the output of the mix into the height. Ooh, that's a little bit too strong, so get a math node, change it to multiply, put it after the image, and bring the value down to bring the bump down. Then change the brightness of the color 2 section to change the bump of the squares. Less is more. Now plug the bump normal into the BSDF normal, and then bam, look at your bike. Now to bake it out, get an image texture, duplicate it, name one base color and the other one normal. On the normal, make sure to click the 32-bit color checkbox. If you don't, it messes it up. Change it to cycles, change the rendering samples to 1. Go down to bake and on base color choose diffuse and turn off indirect lighting. Hit bake and on normal choose normal. Hit bake, save the two images to your desktop, put in your game, and there you go. That's